Okay, so back to barbells. If you've got your sweet spot sorted out, now again, the tendency is that to want to do both at the same time. Build a very reliable business, but also go after bigger and better deals. And I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying let's talk about what an asymmetric bet means. And I like to describe this first through a story. And because I'm talking to myself here, I'm going to tell this story, and it's a game, right? So the game goes like this: you say to somebody, "Hey, let's play this game. It costs $10 to play the game. You can play 6 times, no more than 6. If you win the game, you win $1 million." And you tell that to people, and most of them are like, "Yeah, I'd love to play that game," until you tell them that the game is Russian roulette. And so this is interesting to me because I am hardwired to say, well, yeah, I would spend $10, and I would even spend it 6 times if I could win $1 million, because we're so focused on the upside. You know, you put $10 in and you win $1 million. That's like an unbelievable return, right? And that's how most of us think. But if the game is Russian roulette, and, you know, with Russian roulette, you have a revolver and there's 6 spots in the revolver and there's 1 bullet. And so, you know, you're going to win that game 83% of the time. 5 times out of 6, you're going to win that game. You're not going to catch the bullet. But almost none of us would play that game because the downside risk is so big. And that little story right there is, I think, pokes at the heart of how most entrepreneurs think. We look at the upside. You know, if I do this, I could make, $100,000 on this fix and flip, or you buy this commercial property and I could turn it around and I could make 7 figures on this deal. And so we get very tunnel vision on the upside, but that's not what creates asymmetry. It's relative. It's the upside relative to the downside. So first of all, if you're going to make a bet that's going to blow your head off, that's a bad bet. Don't make that bet. We don't want to take bets that could potentially blow us up and take us out of the game, because the biggest risk all of us have is blowing up, right? So this was really challenging for me because I'm so hardwired towards what's the upside, what can we gain from this? And I do think that's important, right? You don't want to play scared in this business. But I think asymmetry is about, you think about a bell curve. Symmetry, right? We learned this in engineering school. You take a bell curve, like a normal curve. That would be a symmetrical distribution. So a symmetrical bet. Here's why symmetrical bets are no good. And that's what I refer to as middle of the bar. It means like sometimes it goes really well, sometimes it doesn't go very well. I don't know about you, but like those types of bets are what's contributing to the back and forth, the volatility. Again, if sometimes they go really well and sometimes they go really wrong, I would suggest taking those bets off the table. An asymmetric bet is one that has a really high upside relative to the downside. So that Russian roulette game, yeah, you might have a really high upside, but you have a really, really low downside, right? It's a possibility to completely blow up. The problem that comes with asymmetrical bets is oftentimes we don't understand all of the downside risk. What could go wrong? That sort of thing that we say, right? And that's just a harsh truth that most of us have to learn inside of investing. We make bets mostly because we think, well, it's got a lot of high upside, but we can't always quantify what the downside is. And here's the thing, it's not always financial. The downside of taking a lot of these bets is that you're stressed out, is that your health suffers, is that your relationships suffer. Maybe you get caught into a bad deal because you think it's got a lot of upside, but you didn't vet the partners, you didn't vet the full deal, you didn't consider, well, what happens if this, what happens if that? So in general, to me, it's about creating an environment where you can opt in to deals as opposed to opting out. When you have to do deals to keep your business going, you're going to get caught. I mean, that was my experience. Like, yeah, some of them are going to go really well and some of them aren't going to go well. And I prefer to be in a position where I've got this stable, reliable side built around my sweet spot so that I'm extremely picky about the deals that I do. And most importantly, I'm not concerned about the upside. I'm concerned about reducing the downside as much as possible. So that worst case scenario is either we break even or we still make a little bit of money, something like that. And so there's a lot that goes into this kind of engineering asymmetry, engineering luck into your deals. But in general, I wanted to make this video to just explain what an asymmetric bet is. It's a bet that has really high upside relative to the downside. And in fact, the upside can be low as long as the downside is really high as well, right? Hopefully that makes sense. So think about some of the bets that you've made in the past. And again, I know the deals what I went into and it's like, hey, nothing can go wrong. Or maybe you know that certain things can go wrong, but oftentimes we really struggle to quantify what that downside is because there's so many ways it affects us, not just monetarily, but in all of the other currencies that we want to game. So I like to make bets on that side where, first of all, my level of involvement or my exposure to risk, maybe that's capital risk, maybe that's debt, maybe that's like, yeah, if this goes really well, we'll make some money, but if it doesn't, I didn't spend any time on it, really, and I didn't lose a ton of money. So I can think of a lot of different areas where I can describe case in points for how this works, but in general, that's what I mean when I describe an asymmetric bet, is that the downside, even if this thing went completely belly up and it didn't go the way that we wanted, either maybe you're gaining a lot of experience without having to have a lot of capital at risk, or maybe if your capital is at risk, you've positioned the deal in a way where, worst case scenario, we have multiple exit strategies. We're not going to lose any money. Those are good bets to take. And in general, that's about, I think, being picky, being choosy with the right deals, and positioning it so that you're focused, you're letting the upside take care of itself while you're focusing on how do I make sure that in the worst case scenario or the downside is not going to take me out. It's not going to take all this time, energy, and attention from me. And again, you probably are thinking about all the different bets that you've made where you thought there was a big upside, but it turned out to be big downside. We want to take those bets off the table. It comes from a position of not needing to do these deals, right? Where you can opt in as opposed to feeling like you'd have to opt out. So asymmetric bets, you should take them. We'll talk a little bit more about how to engineer that asymmetry into your deals. It comes down to deal structuring. It has a lot to do with understanding how all these things work, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.